Well, we are returning this morning to our series on Ruth, this beautiful story of the lives, the loves, and the losses of three ordinary people. Now, why should we be interested at all in this ancient love story?
Welcome to Open the Bible with Pastor Colin Smith. I'm David Pick. Glad you could be with us today. And Colin, okay, you've got our attention, so now you've got to answer that question. Why should we be interested in this ancient love story?
Well, I think the first thing would be everyone's interested in a love story. This is a story that speaks directly into our lives today because it is a story about love. It's a story about loss. And it's a story about the help and the provision and the kindness of Almighty God. And every one of these themes speak directly into our lives today. I think the Book of Ruth is one of the most beautiful stories in all of the Bible. And I'm so glad that we're able to look at it together today and to see how God ministers to us in the realities of our lives.
So join us in the Book of Ruth, chapter 3, if you can today, as we begin a message entitled Faith. Here's Colin.
Well, we are returning this morning to our series on Ruth, this beautiful story of the lives, the loves, and the losses of three ordinary people. We have met Naomi, who endured great sorrow and great loss. She had moved with her husband and her two sons to Moab because there was a famine in Bethlehem. She had stayed there 10 years, and during that time she had suffered a triple bereavement. First, she had lost her husband, Elimelech. Then she had lost her two married sons, Mahlon and Chilion. And then we met Naomi's daughter-in-law, Ruth, a Moabitess who had come to faith in the living God. And she also, of course, had endured a triple bereavement. She'd lost her husband, she'd lost her father-in-law, and she had lost her brother-in-law. When Naomi returned to Bethlehem, we saw earlier in the story that Ruth made an astonishing commitment of faith and of love. She said to Naomi, "Where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. And your God will be my God." And then we were introduced to the third character, Boaz. Boaz was a relative of Naomi's deceased husband, Elimelech. And he was a man of some means. And it seems clear, as we'll see from the story today, that he was in midlife or older. We saw how when Naomi and Ruth came back to Bethlehem, Ruth went to glean in the fields during the barley harvest. Gleaners would follow the harvesters and basically pick up the small amounts of grain that they left behind. And it just so happened, that word is in chapter 2 and verse 3, that the field in which Ruth chose to glean belonged to this man, Boaz. Now, why should we be interested at all in this ancient love story? What does this have to do with all of us here today? And we've been seeing that this is a story for us because it's not only a story about three ordinary people, it is a story about our extraordinary God. And what we learn from it at its heart is that our extraordinary God weaves our lives and our loves and our losses into his hidden plan to bring blessing to the world. That's what the Book of Ruth is all about. God is able to work through your life. God is able to work through your loves. God is even able to work through your losses in order to bring blessing to you and to others. Now we take up the story then today in chapter 3 and verse 1, where we read that then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, that is Ruth, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you?" Now Naomi was an older woman. And Ruth had made this extraordinary commitment of love and loyalty to support her, to care for her. Where you go, where you live, I will live. Where you die, I will die. But here's the point. What would happen to Ruth when Naomi was gone? And I want you to see here that Naomi gives to us a marvelous snapshot of love in action. Notice that love appreciates what others have done and seeks to do good for them. We want to grow in faith, hope, and love. And here's a snapshot of what it looks like to grow in love right here. There's actually a remarkable change that's taken place in Naomi. At the end of chapter 1, not surprisingly, after a triple bereavement, her thoughts were all about herself and all about her loss. That was what was consuming her mind and her heart. She'd gone through this bitter, bitter experience, and it really had taken its toll. But God's provision for Naomi through Ruth and through Boaz had given her a new sense of hope. It had given her a new sense of purpose. There's a reason why I'm still here. And God has something for me to do. And notice that our focus now is not so much on herself, but on what she can do for Ruth. Now, remember, in Old Testament times particularly, seniority really carried an awful lot of weight. And Naomi could easily have said, well, it's the job of the younger to look after us older ones. It's Ruth's calling to meet my needs. Now, what's Ruth going to do for me? But you see, by God's grace, this older woman has come to a better place. Naomi is not asking in chapter 3 and verse 1, what can Ruth do for me? She is asking, what can I do for Ruth who has loved me so well? How can I make her life better? My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? Now, love appreciates then what others have done for us and therefore seeks to do good for them. So, who has brought blessing into your life? Just think about that. And ask yourself, rather than saying, what more can they do for me? How can I bring blessing to them? Who supports and helps and encourages you? Well, now, how can you help and support and encourage them? Who has been a true friend to you? How can you then be a true friend to them? And then think about what the Lord Jesus Christ has done for you. And then ask, with all the good that he has done for you, what are you prepared to do for him? Naomi is a marvelous example of love because she appreciates what Ruth has done for her and wants now to do good for Ruth. And then I want you to notice, as we think about what it means to grow in love, that love wants others to enjoy gifts that we have not received. Think about this. What Naomi wants when she says, should I not seek rest for you? Very clearly, what she wants here is that Ruth will find another husband. Well, very obviously, that's a gift that Naomi herself did not receive. God did not give Naomi another husband. And of course, the temptation in that situation would be to say, well, I've not had that gift, why should she? But you see, that's not love. Naomi wants for Ruth what she herself was not given. There's not a hint of envy here. None of this, why should she enjoy what I was denied? None of this, why should she have an easier life when I've had it so hard? Love rejoices with those who rejoice, and love wants others to enjoy gifts that we have not received. It's beautiful. And then notice this, that love moves a loved one in the direction of rest. Notice that marriage, because that's what's being spoken about here, is described very beautifully as rest. My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? So marriage, very simply, is a good gift from God in which one man and one woman are brought together in a lasting union of love and mutual support in which they find rest. Isn't that beautiful? That is the purpose of God, rest. God's purpose in marriage is that it should have a settling effect on the lives of both of the people who come into it. That it should bring a greater peace. That it should bring a greater stability. That it should have a calming kind of an effect on all of our inner restlessness. And Naomi says, this is what I want for you, Ruth. I want you to find someone with whom you will find rest. And I want this, that it may be well with you. Now, here's the very obvious question for all of us who are called to marriage. If God's purpose in marriage is that we will find rest, then all of us who are married must surely ask this question: how can I make this marriage a place of greater rest for the spouse that God has trusted to me? So do you see, here is a marvelous, beautiful snapshot of love. Love appreciates what others have done for us and therefore tries to do good for them. Love wants others to enjoy gifts, even gifts that we ourselves did not receive. And love moves a loved one in the direction of rest. Now, Naomi wants Ruth to find a husband. And she's pretty sure that she has worked out who that husband should be. She has picked up on Boaz's kindness to Ruth. Remember in chapter 2 and verse 11, he had already heard, before he met Ruth, he'd already heard about her loving, extraordinary commitment of loyalty to her mother-in-law, and he was intrigued just to meet this remarkable woman about whom he had heard so much. And it was quite clear from chapter 2 that really from the moment they met, there was a connection between them. Boaz, we saw last time, had invited Ruth to lunch. He'd made sure that she had plenty to show for her day's work when she went home, gave her a whole ephah of barley, which was about 30 pounds in weight. And when Naomi, can you picture this? Ruth comes home she's been gleaning, and she comes back with 30 pounds worth of barley. And Naomi's eyes must have been wide. And my goodness, someone's really helped you. And indeed, she says, chapter 2 and verse 19, blessed be the man who took notice of you. Someone noticed you and helped you big time. No other gleaner comes back with an ephah of barley. And you remember that Ruth told her, the name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz. And it did not take Naomi long to work out the possibilities. She says, now you just keep going back to Boaz field. You don't go anywhere else. And that's what Ruth did. And that's the end of chapter 2, if you just glance back to it. She kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and the wheat harvest. So now we've come to the end of the barley harvest.
You're listening to Open the Bible with Pastor Colin Smith and a message called Faith. It's part of our series, Ordinary People, Extraordinary God. And if you've missed any of the series so far, or if you want to go back and listen again, you can always do that by coming online to our website. That's at openthebible.org.uk. There you'll find all the messages which have already been broadcast. You can also find Pastor Colin's teaching as a podcast, if that's a better way for you to keep up with it. And those are on all the main podcast sites. Search for Open the Bible UK and subscribe if you want to be regularly reminded to listen to the podcast. Open the Bible is supported by our listeners financially. And if you already give to support the work, we want to say thank you so much. If you're considering supporting Open the Bible financially in the future, and you're able to set up a new direct debit in the amount of £5 per month or more, or a one-off gift of £50 or more, we'd love to thank you by sending you a copy of Lee Strobel's book, The Case for Easter, along with Pastor Colin's booklet, 6 Days That Changed the World, and a lovely Open the Bible tote bag, pen and bookmark. Colin, what makes this book so useful?
Oh, well, its author, Lee Strobel, was a journalist for the Chicago Tribune when he began exploring the Christian faith. And in The Case for Easter, he actually retraces his steps, showing the biblical evidence that led him to the conclusion that Jesus really rose from the dead. It's a fascinating book because he interviews experts who help us to sort through the Bible's evidence for the resurrection. So, for example, he interviews a medical doctor to help us examine the evidence that Jesus really died, and a psychologist to help us see that Jesus' appearances could not have been simply hallucinations. So the Case for Easter really helps Christians know why we believe in the resurrection, and it can provide a wonderful pathway to faith for someone who's beginning to explore the truths of Christianity.
Well, we'd love to send you a copy of Lee Strobel's book, The Case for Easter, if you're able to set up a new direct debit to the work of Open the Bible in the amount of £5 per month or more in this month of April, or if you're able to make a one-off gift of £50 or more. Full details, terms and conditions are on our website, and that's at openthebible.org.uk. Back to the message now. Here's Colin.
Now, there are three things that I want us to notice in the passage that's before us today. First, Naomi's counsel. Second, Ruth's initiative. And third, Boaz's resolve. First, then, Naomi's counsel, verse 2-4. Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young woman you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight on the threshing floor. Wash therefore and anoint yourself and put on your cloak and go on down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. Naomi tells her daughter-in-law to make herself as attractive as possible, to sneak up on a man who has already shown interest in her when he's on his own in the middle of the night and lie down at his feet. It is not surprising that Naomi has come in for some harsh criticism for her plan. Is Naomi suggesting that Ruth should seduce Boaz so that he would feel that he had to marry her? Did she not realize the terrible danger that she was putting Ruth in by sending her alone at night to the threshing floor? Is she guilty of trying to nudge the hand of God when she should have waited for God to work out his own perfect plan and purpose? Well, Karen and I have enjoyed watching a TV program called Alone, which some of you may also have seen and enjoyed. Volunteers endure extreme weather conditions, forage for food, protect themselves against attack from wild animals, to see who can survive the longest in some remote corner of the planet. And at the beginning of every episode, you see this warning: do not try this yourself. Now, that warning should be attached to any study of Ruth chapter 3. Do not try what Naomi proposed and what Ruth did yourself. It would not be wise for a young woman to steal into the house of a man she hopes to marry and lie down at his feet while he is sleeping. And if someone were to do this, it would be quite wrong to claim Scripture as your reason for what you did. This is not an example to follow. Why? Well, at least one reason: there are not many men who would have the self-control that Boaz did. But having given the do not try this yourself warning, I want us to see that Naomi's counsel is a beautiful expression of faith and hope and love. Boaz had clearly shown interest in Ruth, but he had done nothing to move the relationship forward. And there may be a hint as to why this was in verse 10, where Boaz says, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter." That's how he addresses Ruth. So the fact that Boaz addresses Ruth as daughter indicates that there was a very substantial difference in age. Boaz was much older than Ruth. And you see, that is why he says in verse 10, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, in that you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich." The natural thing for Ruth to have done, of course, would have been to go after someone of her own age. And if Boaz had any romantic thoughts in regards to Ruth, he would have been very quick to put these out of his mind. I mean, why would a young woman like Ruth have any interest in an aging man like me? So you see, when Ruth came home from the fields day after day during the barley harvest, Naomi would ask her, "Did you see Boaz today?" "Oh yes, I had lunch with him and the others." "Did he say anything to you today?" "No, nothing unusual." And now it's the end of the barley harvest. And Naomi is thinking, he's never going to have the courage to ask her. Well, we all know how this story should end. But time has passed. Nothing has happened until Naomi came to the rescue. The barley harvest is over, and Naomi reckons it's now or never. And so she encourages Ruth to take a risky initiative of faith. What she's saying to her is basically this: put away your mourning clothes and dress yourself as if for a wedding, because that's what's ahead of you. That's Naomi's counsel.
You've been listening to Open the Bible with Pastor Colin Smith, and a message called Faith, part of our series, Ordinary People, Extraordinary God, based on the Book of Ruth. And today we've been looking at Naomi's counsel. Next time we'll look at Ruth's initiative and Boaz's resolve. So I hope you'll join us for that. Don't forget, if you ever miss one of the programs, or if you want to go back and listen again, come to our website, openthebible.org.uk, or find us as a podcast, and those are on all the main podcast sites. Search for Open the Bible UK. Here's Open the Bible's Amanda Cunningham with news of a special promotion by Open the Bible this Easter.
How will you reach out to your local community this Easter with the good news of the gospel? How will you inspire awe in your church family at the wonder of the cross when the story is familiar? Open the Bible UK would love to help you. We filmed a one-actor, one-hour performance of Colin's well-known book, Heaven, How I Got Here, The Story of the Thief on the Cross. It's a powerful gospel message, and we're making the film available to you for free. Alongside it, we have also created a complete Easter resource pack, including event artwork and an event guide, designed as an easy evangelistic event for inviting friends or the local community. It's also perfect for small groups to watch and discuss during Holy Week. To find out more, go to openthebible.org.uk.
At Open the Bible, we welcome contact with our listeners. You can email us by using the contact form on our website, openthebible.org.uk/contact. You can write to us at Open the Bible, PO Box 1420, Cheltenham, GL50 9PG. Or you can phone us on 0330 335 8089. If we're not available when you call, leave a message for us and we'll return your call. All of these contact details are available on our website, openthebible.org.uk. For Open the Bible and Pastor Colin Smith, I'm David Pick, and I hope you'll join us again next time. Hear about Ruth's risky initiative of faith next time on Open the Bible.